If you look at it long term, I mean, primarily the German dependence on gas. I mean, first there's a huge dependence on Russian gas from those countries that were part of either the Soviet Union, the Baltic states, or Warsaw Pact, Eastern Europe. That comes from sort of history, and it takes a long time to change that. Germany has been importing for decades. It has been very much of a problem, as a matter of fact. And this is the first time, really, that it comes into play. Putin has been using the threat of cutting gas towards Ukraine and towards members of the sort of ex-members of the Soviet Union X numbers of times. But he's been rather careful in the case of Germany so far. What will happen now, we simply don't know. He hasn't threatened to do anything in this particular case. He's threatened to invade Ukraine, but so far be careful with Germany. So I think the threat for gas supplies, I mean, there are two sorts of problems that could come in. First, if there's fighting and invasion in Ukraine, it's fairly difficult to see that while the tanks are rolling and shooting on the ground, that the pipes will deliver gas just meters below them. Difficult to see. I think the gas will be cut through Ukraine in that particular case. Then if Russia wants to do counter-sanctions against the West, if they're heavy Western sanctions, I mean, the only forceful, really dangerous thing that they can do is to cut the gas supply, then also that running through Belarus and Nord Stream 1. And that will have a detrimental effect and will make it somewhat difficult for Europe. And there are lots of discussions at the moment on how that can be handled.
Right. Something else very interesting has happened in the past 24 hours. The US Secretary of State has reached out to his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. What is the American calculus in bringing the Chinese into these conversations with the Russians?
I think obviously the reason is to say to the Chinese, why should you go into this one? Stay away from it. President Putin is not going to achieve his aims. And if you go back to 2014, when Putin last used military power against Ukraine and occupied and annexed Crimea, the Chinese were fairly careful. They stayed away from it. They abstained. They didn't oppose what the Russians did. They didn't support it. They abstained in the UN. And what they will do now remains to be seen. It has some importance, I guess, because if there are severe Western sanctions against Russia, which there will be, I think the Russians might be counting on some sort of Chinese help to handle, say, the financial effects of that. Mr. Putin will be going to see Xi Jinping in Beijing next week in connection with the opening of the Olympics, and I don't think we'll see any dramatic developments before that.